This is a follow-up game rules video from the first one. Click up there to check it out. But basically, so this is how a chessboard is packed. And if your chessboard has numbers, okay, so you have A to H. If your chessboard has numbers and letters, A to H is how so you have rook or castle, you have knight or horse, you have the bishop, you have the king and queen. Queen is always packed on D and king is always packed on E. And then if you have 1 to 8, it's always white on 1 and then black on 8. And then in each game, the white always starts first in each game. Now, basically how they move, it was covered in the previous episode, but just a recap is that the pawn always moves. The pawn, when starting, always can move 2 steps or 1 step, but every step after that, it's only in one step. It's only 1 step, and then the rook, from whichever position it is in, it moves horizontally or vertically from whichever position it's in. And then your bishop, depending on the square, in this one you have, in this case you have a brown and then you have a white square. So the bishop on the white square, it only moves diagonally. So if you find it there, these are the only options you can move. But if you find that it's blocked, then you can only move up until that. Right? There's no jumping involved. That is the same with now the queen is just a combination of both of them. So the queen moves horizontally and vertically as well as diagonally, depending on which square it is. So you can move. So if it's here, then you can only move diagonally down the white spaces. And if it's on the brown square, you can only move diagonally down the brown spaces as well as horizontally and vertically. Now, the knight, however, is a interesting piece in how it moves in an L shape. So it goes in whichever direction that you find it in, it can move. So it moves in L shape, so it's either 1, 2, 3, right? So it goes 2 steps in either the horizontal and the vertical step, and then 1 step to the left or the right. So in this case, it moves 2 steps vertically, and then 1 step to the left or the right, and then 2 steps horizontally, left or right, and then left or right. But then it's only a piece where it's like it teleports. So say you have an enemy piece there, it can only move and take that piece there in that square, and it can only move to that square. There's no other. So if a piece is here and it is here, you can't take this piece. It will only move to the piece it's supposed to go. But the nice thing about it is that even if you're starting like this, it's the only piece that can jump. So it jumps over, teleports there, and teleports there. So you can think of it as your teleportation piece. So you have the knight. Now so that's the first interesting about it. And then you have the second. Now you have your pawn as well. Even though they may seem uninteresting, there's an interesting that happens once you're able to get your pawn to the other side of the square. And so once you're able to get your pawn to the other side of the, let's just take this away. So once you're able to get any one of these pawns to the other side, you're able to pick any one of these 4 that you can then play in. So in that case, if you have a queen on the board that says somewhere here, right, and then you get your pawn to the other side, that means you can have a situation where you're playing with 2 queens. Now, in the game, I suppose a upside down rook is often as a queen. So say you have 32 pieces you only have 32 pieces. You don't have an extra queen. If your rook is out, you can just flip it over, and that signifies an extra queen. So you can have a situation where you have 2 or 3 or 4 queens playing in the same game for your side. That is the basics of how it goes. And then the pawn, it moves 1 step, but it only takes another piece when it's to diagonally on one side. And then the king, wherever it is, it only moves 1 space from wherever it is. Now, suppose the last thing to mention about how the game is played is that if say we have a game like this, perhaps something like that. So say we have a game structured like this, we'll put a piece like this, and we haven't moved the rook or the king. There's something that's called castling that we can do. So castling is if you haven't moved the rook or the king, you can castle on the king side. So castling basically means 1, 2, where you move the king 2 steps to the right and then your rook goes this side. Or you can do it on the queen side. So say these 2 pieces haven't moved. You can go 2 pieces on the queen side and then your rook like that. Say you have a situation where your game looks something like this, and you can need an extra, and you want an extra reinforcement on this side to attack, then you can do castling to then move your rook on this side, and now you have an extra reinforcement on this side to attack the king. So that's all on how the game is played, the basic rules you need to know. Of course, this is a follow-up video on the first one that was done on the basic rules, so do watch that one first before coming to this one. But now, say now you want to learn how each piece moves and want to get a grasp of it. Now we're moving into a few games you can play where, so normally your chessboard is packed like this. Let's say, let's just do that. So chessboard normally is packed like this. What you can do is a variation of this. Say you're playing with a friend, you want to get to know how each piece moves. You can literally just take everything out and just play with the pawns on each side. And now when you're playing a game like this, basically the objective is to get this pawn to the other side of the enemy line. So from 2 to 8, if you do that, then whoever gets that first wins, and that now gets you familiar with the concept of promotion. And then take it a step further, you can add the king. Same thing, you're just moving there, but now with added complexity. Step further, you can now add the rooks on each side, and however you like. Then from there we can just put in the queen and so on. So you can add your own variation to it and make it more exciting as you get to know how each piece moves, learn the variations of it. You can also say just play without the queen as well, learn how each of the other moves, to learn how each of the other pieces play in general. Now the next part isn't as a bonus, I suppose. It's not really necessary, but so let's say if you're playing, I suppose, quote unquote professional, there is a sort of rating system for each piece where, so your pawn is say 1 point, and then your knight and your bishop are 3 points. You have your rook, which is 5 points, and then your queen is 8 points, and then your king is 9 points. So you have 1 point, 3 points, 5 points, 8 points, and 9 points. So you can use that pointing system to decide between which piece you want to sacrifice. So that's a rating system. And if you're wondering about the names, so this is a pawn in any game that you're playing. This is a horse or a knight, professionally, I suppose. And then your bishop is bishop. Now this is either a rook or a castle. That's your queen, and that's a king. And that's all you probably need to know to play chess, or perhaps more than you need to know to play chess. And the other rules, I suppose, you'll see them as you go along.